Have you ever felt that quiet pull in your heart, like a gentle nudge from somewhere beyond? It's not loud, not a shout. It's more like a whisper, a sense that something is waiting for you just around the corner. And in that quiet, you begin to wonder, could there really be a door opening just for me? Today, I want to invite you into that stillness, to slow down, to breathe deep, and to listen closely. Because sometimes the most life-changing moments begin not with noise, but with silence. It's the hush before the dawn, the calm before a gentle wave carries you somewhere new. I remember sitting with my grandmother once in the hush of an early morning. She was a woman of few words, but that morning she leaned close and said, "The doors that matter most never announce themselves with a bang. They appear when your heart is quiet enough to hear the latch turn." I didn't fully understand it then, but I've come to see how right she was. The doors that matter, the ones that bring real peace and purpose, open in silence. So as we walk together in these next few minutes, I want you to set aside the rush and the noise. Lean in, because Archangel Michael has whispered that a door is opening for you, a door you may not even have known was there. And it's not just any door. It's a chance to reclaim what's yours, to step into something bigger than you ever dared to hope. Let's find out what waits on the other side. There's a kind of strength that doesn't need to be loud. It's the quiet power of patience, the soft but steady resolve that grows when you decide to hold your dreams close to your heart, even when the world tells you to shout them from the rooftops. And in that gentle silence, something truly miraculous begins to take shape. I think of my friend Clara, who spent years working behind the scenes in her small town library. She had big dreams of opening a community center where people could come together, share stories, and find comfort in the quiet company of others. But instead of rushing to make it happen, she tended to those dreams in the stillness of her own heart. She saved a little bit each month, read every book she could on community building, and kept her plans close, like seeds planted deep in the soil. When the time finally came, when the right building went up for sale, Clara was ready. No one had seen it coming, but she'd been preparing in the quiet all along. And that center she built, it's now a sanctuary for so many people who needed a place to feel seen and heard. Clara taught me that sometimes the quiet path is the one that leads to the richest harvest. That's the lesson Archangel Michael wants you to remember today. Silence isn't emptiness. It's a sacred space where faith and intention can grow strong, away from the noise and doubt of the world. Because what's waiting for you isn't about who can shout the loudest. It's about who can believe in the quietest moments. As we take the next step, remember that you're not falling behind by staying silent. You're building a foundation that no one can shake. And soon, we'll see how that quiet faith becomes the key to unlocking the door that's been waiting for you all along. Archangel Michael's message isn't just a whisper in the wind. It's a promise that the door you've been waiting for is real, and it's opening for those who have the courage to believe. This isn't a door that's been thrown open for the world to see. It's a door meant for the patient, the quiet, the ones who have held their faith close through the long nights and silent prayers. I remember my neighbor, Thomas. For years, he carried a dream of starting a small workshop where he could teach woodworking to kids and retirees alike. But he didn't rush out to make it happen. He didn't shout it from the rooftops or try to impress anyone. Instead, he spent his evenings sketching out plans, gathering tools bit by bit, and learning from every small project he took on. He knew that some doors don't open with noise, they open with readiness. When the old community center in our neighborhood was suddenly up for sale, Thomas didn't have to wonder if he was ready. His quiet faith and careful work had prepared him for that moment. And when he stepped into that space, it was like stepping into a room that had been waiting for him all along. Thomas's journey is a gentle reminder. The doors that matter most are the ones that open for those who are willing to trust in the slow magic of faith and patience. Archangel Michael's message is clear. You don't need to force what's meant for you. You just need to be ready when the latch turns. As we continue, remember that the door opening for you isn't just about a single opportunity. It's about the quiet work you've done, the belief you've nurtured, and the trust that's carried you here. And in the next part of this journey, we'll see how even the things you thought were forgotten can become the foundation for everything that's coming next. There's a kind of wealth that doesn't come in the form of dollars or checks. It comes in the form of ideas, of passions long buried, of small seeds planted years ago that are just now beginning to sprout. It's the quiet wealth of opportunity that's been waiting, even if you haven't seen it yet. I think of my Uncle Dave, who spent decades working in a factory. He'd always dreamed of owning a small antique shop, a cozy place filled with treasures and stories. But life, as it so often does, sent him down other paths, bills to pay, children to raise, and doubts that whispered, it's too late. But somewhere deep down, that old dream never died. One winter, long after he'd retired, he started sorting through boxes in his attic. In those dusty boxes, he found pieces of history he'd forgotten. He'd collected old signs, vintage lamps, little relics that told stories of another time. As he dusted them off, he realized that what he'd been quietly gathering all those years was more than just stuff. It was the very foundation for that dream he'd always carried. That spring, Uncle Dave finally opened his little shop. It was quiet, no big grand opening, but when you stepped inside, you could feel the years of love and patience in every corner. He told me, I thought I was too old for dreams. Turns out, my dreams were just waiting for me to be ready. The lesson here is simple but profound. The seeds of opportunity are often already in your hands. They've been waiting in the quiet, just like that door has been waiting for you. And as we continue, I want you to remember that nothing you've carried in your heart is wasted. Even the dreams you set aside have a way of coming back, ready to blossom when the time is right. Sometimes, the first sign that something is shifting in your life isn't an announcement from the world around you. It's a quiet feeling that begins in your own body. A sudden chill that has nothing to do with the weather. A warmth that comes out of nowhere. Or a gentle pressure in your chest, as if your heart already knows what's on the way. I think of my friend Eleanor, who once told me how she'd feel a soft buzzing in her fingertips whenever something important was about to happen. She didn't understand it at first, but over time, she began to see the pattern. "It's like my body is the first to hear the whisper," she said. And time and again, that whisper was right: a job offer, an unexpected check, a phone call that changed everything. Eleanor's story reminds us that the body is a kind of compass tuned into the deeper currents of life long before our minds catch up. Too often, we dismiss those small sensations as nothing: a random shiver, a fleeting moment of peace. But what if they're not random at all? What if they're the first echoes of that silent door turning on its hinges? The lesson here is to listen, to pause when something stirs in your gut or your heart. Because the divine often speaks softly at first, and our bodies hear it before we do. And as we step into the next part of this journey, I want you to carry that awareness with you, because those gentle signals aren't just physical, they're spiritual too. They're the promise that your door is closer than you think, waiting for the moment when you're ready to walk through. One of the hardest truths we learn as we grow older is that doubt can be louder than any voice in the world. It's that little whisper in the back of your mind that says, "Are you sure you're ready? Are you sure you're enough?" It can be so convincing that we start to believe it's the only truth that matters. I remember talking with a man named Bill, who'd spent years working in construction. He'd built houses for everyone else, but when it came to his own dream, opening a woodworking shop in his retirement, he kept hearing that same doubt. "I'm too old," he'd say. "Who would come to me now?" So he let the dream sit in the corner of his heart, gathering dust. But one day, he decided to take a chance anyway. He started small, fixing old chairs and tables for friends. The work was slow at first, but with each finished piece, his confidence grew. And soon word spread. People came not just for his skill, but for the quiet pride and care he put into every project. Bill told me, "I wasted so many years thinking doubt was the truth, but it was just noise. My hands knew what my heart was afraid to say." The lesson here is gentle, but powerful. Doubt is just a shadow. It doesn't have to define you. It can only block you if you let it. And the divine doesn't measure your worth by how loud your doubt is, but by how willing you are to move forward anyway. As we continue, remember that every step you take in faith, even if it's shaky at first, is a step closer to the door that's been waiting for you all along. Because the only thing that truly has the power to stop you is the belief that you can't begin. There's a quiet strength that comes from knowing you're never really alone. Even in the moments when you feel like you're carrying the weight of the world all by yourself. There are hands you can't see, holding you steady from somewhere beyond. I think of my neighbor, Ruth, who always kept a small photo of her grandfather on her desk. She said she could feel his presence in the hardest times, like when her job was uncertain or when her health took an unexpected turn. I know he's gone, she'd say, but somehow it feels like he's still guiding me. She said it wasn't just about the photo, it was about the quiet memories, the prayers he whispered for her that she never even heard. And Ruth isn't alone. So many of us carry the hopes of those who came before us. Their love, their quiet faith, still flows through us like an invisible river. Even if we can't see it, it's there, a silent support that holds us up when our own strength begins to waver. The lesson here is gentle, but sure. Your journey isn't just yours. It's a continuation of every hope and prayer that's ever been spoken over your life. The divine doesn't just send help from the heavens, it sends it through the hearts of those who loved you before you even arrived. As we step forward together, I want you to remember this. Every quiet moment of faith you hold today is carrying forward the light of those who came before. And in the next part of this journey, we'll see how even the most unexpected challenges can be the start of something beautiful when you have that kind of love at your back. Sometimes, the very things that push us away from what we know can end up being the doorway we never saw coming. It's a strange truth, how betrayal or rejection can be the spark that sets something better in motion. I remember hearing the story of Alan, who worked for a small family-run store for nearly 20 years. He treated it like his own, showing up early and staying late, pouring his heart into every customer's experience. But one day, without warning, the owners decided to sell the store and left Alan without a job or a plan. For a long time, Alan felt lost. He'd given so much, and it felt like all of it had been for nothing. But in that quiet space, away from the noise of his old routine, he began to remember a dream he'd had as a young man, to open his own little repair shop. It was a dream he'd put away years ago, too busy helping others to think of himself. With the small severance pay he received, Alan rented a tiny storefront. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Little by little, he turned that space into a place of care and skill, a place that reflected his own gentle spirit. And as people discovered what he could do, the quiet blessing of his own work began to grow. Alan told me, losing that job was the hardest thing that ever happened to me, but it forced me to open a door I didn't know I was ready for. The lesson is simple: betrayal can feel like an end, but often it's an invitation to step into something you never would have dared to claim for yourself. The divine doesn't waste our pain. It uses it to reroute us to what's truly ours. As we keep going, hold on to that truth, because what might feel like a closed door is sometimes the key to the door you were always meant to find. Not all barriers are made of brick and stone. Sometimes the hardest walls we face are the ones we've built in our own hearts. They're not always easy to see, but they can keep us from stepping through the doors that are already open for us. I remember talking with a woman named June. She'd always dreamed of sharing her art, of opening a little studio where she could teach others to paint. But every time she thought about it, a voice in her mind would say, "Who do you think you are? No one will want to learn from you." That voice was quiet but relentless, and for years, it kept her gift locked away. It wasn't until she started to notice how often people would compliment her paintings, strangers, friends, even her grandchildren, that she realized maybe the barrier wasn't real. It was just a shadow of old fears, built from years of believing she wasn't enough. And so she took a small step. She offered a free class in her living room. That one class turned into another, and then another, until she had a whole community of people who came not just to paint, but to feel the peace and joy she'd always had in her own quiet work. June's story is a gentle reminder sometimes the curse that needs to be broken is the one we've spoken over ourselves. It's not always the world holding us back. It's the quiet doubt that we're not allowed to want more. But as Archangel Michael's message says, the divine is always working to break those barriers, to lift the weight that never should have been yours to carry. As we move forward, keep listening for those whispers of freedom, because the door isn't just opening outside you, it's opening inside you too. And soon, you'll see how even the smallest shift in your heart can change everything that waits on the other side. Life has a way of sending us quiet confirmations when we're finally ready to notice them. These signs might come in unexpected forms, repeated number, a dream you can't quite shake, or even a conversation that seems to happen at just the right time. They're not always loud, but they're always meant to catch your attention and remind you that the door is truly opening. I remember my neighbor Linda sharing a story with me about how for weeks she kept seeing the number 444 on license plates, on receipts, even in random phone numbers that popped up on her caller ID. She didn't know what it meant at first, but the more she saw it, the more she felt like it was a message, a gentle tap on the shoulder from something bigger than herself. One day, she decided to treat it like a sign instead of a coincidence. She started to take small steps toward a project she'd been thinking about for years. A small cafe that would be a place for connection and community. It didn't happen overnight, but with each step, she felt more certain that she was on the right path. And sure enough, the pieces began to fall into place. Old friends reappeared to help. A perfect space became available, and the cafe opened its doors quietly, just like the sign had promised. Linda's story taught me something simple but profound. The universe doesn't shout its messages, it whispers them. And when we pay attention to those whispers, we find ourselves exactly where we're meant to be. As we move on, remember that these signs aren't meant to confuse you. They're meant to confirm that what's coming is already yours. And soon, you'll see how each little sign was a breadcrumb, leading you straight to the door that's been waiting for you all along. There's something deeply reassuring about the way the universe delivers its blessings in the quietest of ways, not with fanfare or fireworks, but in gentle moments that grow and multiply in the stillness of your life. This is the overflow that comes from faith, the kind of abundance that doesn't need to shout to be real. I think of my friend Harold, who spent most of his life working at a small town grocery store. He never sought out the spotlight, and he never thought of himself as someone who had much to give. But he had a way of making people feel welcome, of remembering the small details about their lives that made them feel seen. Over the years, that quiet kindness built something bigger than he ever realized. When he retired, the town didn't forget him. Neighbors brought him meals, offered him small jobs to keep him busy, and told him how much his quiet presence had meant to them. "I never thought of it as anything special," he told me once. "I was just doing what I could." But in that simple, steady faithfulness, Harold had created a kind of wealth that couldn't be counted in dollars, richness of spirit that filled his life with meaning and comfort. Harold's story is a gentle lesson. You don't have to shout to be heard, and you don't have to push to be blessed. Sometimes, the quiet overflow of your own life is the loudest answer to the prayers you didn't even know you were whispering. As we approach the final part of this journey together, hold on to that quiet strength, because what's waiting for you on the other side of the door isn't just a single blessing. It's a way of living that brings peace and purpose to every corner of your life. As we come to the final part of this journey, I want you to remember that the door you've been waiting for is not just a moment. It's a promise that's been growing with you all along. Sometimes it takes years, even decades, for us to see how every small act of faith, every quiet decision, and every patient hope has been leading us here. I remember a woman named Alice who spent most of her life caring for others, her children, her parents, her neighbors. She never thought of herself as someone who would ever make it big. But in her 70s, she decided to do something she'd always dreamed of. She opened a small greenhouse behind her house. It wasn't a grand business, but it was hers. She tended to those plants the way she'd tended to people all her life, with gentle hands and a quiet faith that growth can happen anywhere. When I visited her, I saw how that greenhouse had become a place of beauty and peace. Neighbors would stop by just to breathe in the scent of green leaves, to share a cup of tea, to feel that calm energy that only Alice could bring. "I didn't open this place to make money," she said softly. "I opened it because it was the door I'd always known was waiting for me." Alice's story is a reminder that the doors we've been waiting for aren't just about success or status. They're about finding the place that feels like home, the purpose that's always been quietly calling your name. As you step forward from here, know that the door is opening for you too. It's not something you have to chase or fight for. It's already been written in your story, and what's waiting on the other side is a chance to step into everything you've always carried inside you, gently, quietly, and with the kind of faith that can move mountains. So take a breath. Hold your heart steady. The silent door is open, and it's yours to walk through.